Many times when I look at Africa and I look at how this continent was so very cruelly divided in 1884, not for the benefit of Africans, but for the benefit of the colonial powers. And when I look at the process of decolonization, it is as if Africa was designed to fail. The post-colonial African nation was never designed to succeed. And that must be at the back of our minds. So that when we grapple with the problems that we have, we must contextualize them in history. How is it that our countries were so arbitrarily divided? How is it that our institutions were undermined? So that when we talk about the traditional kingdoms, they were undermined. They lost their value. How is it that foreign systems were imposed on us? So that when we use words such as democracy, I normally ask people to think in their mother tongue. Think in Luganda, in Busoga, in Dopadola. What is the equivalent word for democracy? And if anybody discovers it, tell me. Because we have our own words of defining and describing governance. So, I very reluctantly use the word democracy. I use the word governance, because governance we know. And when I talk about elections and their impact in Africa, I go back to 1963. In 1963, 32 African countries had regained their independence. The leaders gathered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and each one of them spoke. For Uganda, the person who spoke was Apollo Milton Obote. He was then the prime minister. Of course, Kabaka Mutesa was the president at that time. He dispatched the prime minister Obote to be present. Each one of them recognized the need to rethink governance in Africa. Kwame Nkrumah naively thought that Africa would unite very quickly and that the problems would disappear. In 1965, he writes a book which he calls Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of imperialism, and he proceeds to say the most dangerous. Some say that it's because of that book that 1 year later he was then overthrown in a military coup d'etat. In other words, Africans had started getting dissatisfied with inherited systems. So soon after we regained our independence, the election that we are talking about in Congo in 1961, no sooner has Lumumba, for whom I am named, been elected than 9 months later, he is killed. 1961. And Congo has never been the same again. In Togo in 1963, Sylvanus Olympio is also assassinated. And it has never been the same again. In Nigeria, there is a coup d'etat in 1967, and it has never been the same again. In Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania in 1964, simultaneously there are mutinies. And of course in Uganda in 1971, there is a coup d'etat. And it's only after much problems in 1986 that the NRA-NRM government comes into existence. Spain in Luero. Pain in different parts. The administration then takes the view then that perhaps there is a problem with governance. And Uganda has what is called a no-party system. But Europe and America are quick to tell us that those are not democratic. And somehow we believe them. Somehow. Do you know that many African countries don't even print their ballots? We must start with that. If we don't print our ballot papers in Germany, we are printing them in Greece. If we are not printing them in Greece, we are printing them in London. If we are not printing them in London, we are printing them in Paris. We don't even trust ourselves to print a paper, which when we throw in the ballot and it's counted, it is useless. It has more security features than our currency in Africa, because we don't trust each other. So I'm suggesting to this assembly here that the time is now, because elections in Africa are life-threatening. And the question is, why are they life-threatening? Permit me, Madam Chair, before I get into the crux of my matter, to just walk you around Africa now to see what is happening. In South Africa, some South Africans are working in hospitals and expelling their fellow Africans, saying they should go back home. In Zimbabwe, there is a group called Mutuakazi who want to change and to create their own country. In Zambia, the former president is dead. They are worrying and quarreling in South Africa as whether he should be buried at home or not. In Malawi, they are going through an electoral process and it is the same. In Tanzania, it is the same. Just this morning, I've read a letter written by the opposition leader who is in prison, lamenting about the charge that he faces, the charge of treason. In Kenya, our elections are 2 years away, and you would think they are tomorrow. And only 2 days ago, people are already rising against each other from an ethnic perspective. In Uganda, it is the same. You are buying votes using motorcycles and rice and t-shirts. In Sudan, they have degenerated. They are killing each other, and the opposition leader declared himself a president. There are now 2 presidents in that country. In South Sudan, the same. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the former president is being tried in absentia and is facing treason charges in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Central African Republic, there is a leader who has extended his term, and but for the Russian military would be out of power. In Libya, there are 2 governments. In the Sahel, in Niger, in Mali, and Burkina, there are military governments. In La Côte d'Ivoire, the president has extended his term. That is the state of our continent. And every time we face elections, there are threats. It's Chinua Achebe who said, when you see a toad jumping into the daylight, something is after its life. Something is after your life. That's why you are congregated here. You fear that if we continue on this trajectory, people will rise against each other because they belong to different tribes, because they belong to different religions. You fear that women will be molested because of elections. You fear that politicians will throw each other into jail and some will be killed because people are seeking office. That is why we are assembled here. And we are assembled here to wonder what it is that we can do to immunize ourselves from the pain that election visits upon us every other circle. That's why we are gathered here. We are here as people who mean well for Uganda. All African politicians, almost without exceptions, have scales on their eyes and wax in their ears. We must do something to melt the wax and to make the scales to fall down and to tell them that leadership is a position of trust.